You want to know the rules for multifamily dwelling ADUs, yeah? Because they're different. You can do more stuff than with single-family residences. At the end of this video, you'll know the basics, and I'll show you an example from the city of Oakland that kind of illustrates why the basics aren't enough, why this is complicated, and that example will teach you 3 really important principles on how to approach your project if you've got multifamily dwellings on your property. All right, so the basic rule is that if there's a multifamily dwelling on the property, you get to do different things than with single-family dwellings. And broadly, it's more liberal. But we'll get into the details, right? Because that's my thing. In single-family residences, when you've got a single-family residence on your lot, then you can build 1 detached ADU. If you've got a multifamily dwelling on your lot, then you can build 2 detached ADUs. If you have a single-family dwelling on your lot, you can convert 1 existing space into an ADU or a JADU, junior ADU. If you have a multifamily dwelling on your lot, you can convert multiple existing spaces into ADUs. You could do up to 1 new unit per 4 existing units. Or if you don't have 4 existing units, if you have fewer than that, it just rounds up to 1. So far, so good. But the definition of multifamily is a bit weird. Intuitively, you would think that if you have 2 houses on 1 lot and each one gets rented to a different family, that's a multifamily property, and it's not. That's not at least what the ADU law allows for. The section of the code says multifamily dwelling, and the way that the HCD has clarified that is that if the 2 units share a structure, share a wall, then it's a multifamily dwelling. If you have separate single-family residences on the lot, then you go back to the single-family law. So that's the first thing that's kind of weird. But we're still in the basics, right? And then every jurisdiction might or might not interpret that the same way. They might know the HCD guidance and be more liberal and allow you to do it multifamily, even though it's SFRs. You never know. But if they don't allow for the multifamily dwelling stuff, because a lot of jurisdictions might not be aware of some of these rules, you might want to show them the HCD guidance, link in the description below, that's the handbook. And then beyond the definition of multifamily dwelling being a little odd, there's a lot of room for interpretation on this part of the code. It's less fleshed out in the code. There's just fewer words written about the multifamily section. And then a lot hasn't been interpreted or litigated yet. And so different jurisdictions can choose to read it a little differently. And that's what this example in Oakland is all about. So here's the example in Oakland. Listen to the city planner explain the rules in Oakland for multifamily and see if you get it. I'll illustrate it right after her explanation with this whiteboard.
So the standards for the multifamily properties, essentially, there's also the minimum size of 150 square feet, the maximum size of 800 square feet for a 1 bedroom or 1,000 square feet for 2 bedrooms or more. And there is an error we realized that we have in here for the maximum number for the category 2. So we had in here, it says at least 1 per lot, but no more than 2 per lot, as long as the 2 ADUs do not exceed 800 square feet in total footprint. And what that actually pertains only to if we're going to waive the open space requirements or waive the maximum lot coverage. Otherwise, if those 2 things are met, then the ADUs can be larger than what is stated. So we need to fix that in the maximum number statement. And again, in the side and rear setbacks, you also have the 4-foot requirements. And then, let's see, for owner occupancy, there's no requirement for owner occupancy, and then each unit must also have a...
All right, so this is a little dry erase board illustration for the visual learners. Imagine you've got a lot represented by this red box, and it's 3,200 square feet. And imagine on that lot you've got a 1,600 square foot multifamily dwelling that already exists there. This isn't to scale. Don't at me. Then imagine that the city has an open space requirement of 50%. It says you got to keep half your lot open. Now, this 1,600 is already half of 3,200, so you technically are already at the maximum allowed space on that lot. You can't build past that normally. But there's a provision in the code that says if your ADU is less than 800 square feet, the city cannot enforce or should not enforce this percentage-based space requirement. So you're free to put an 800 square foot ADU there, a detached 800 square foot ADU. And that's true about single-family residences too. Now the thing that gets tricky is the ADU code says you can build 2 detached ADUs if you've got a multifamily dwelling. So some people hear that and they say, oh, I can build 2 800 square foot ADUs. Each one is under 800 square feet and is therefore exempt from the open space requirement. But the city of Oakland says, oh, no, they have to be a combined 800 square feet or less. So the first one is exempt, but the second one, you can't do that because now you're being held to the open space requirement. The city of Oakland says you could do a 2-story, and then they have the same footprint, so it's okay, but you can't do both. Or you could do 2 400 square foot ADUs. They're cool with that. And so that's how they're interpreting the law. What brings us to the next chapter of this riveting story. So you're with me? You're still with me. It gets even more complicated because, lawyers. So you know how I always say I'm not a lawyer? Well, this guy is a lawyer, and he came into the city council to remind them he is a lawyer, and he wanted them to make sure they knew about his strongly worded letter. Here's the video of that.
I'm a land use attorney with the law firm of Holland & Knight. I specialize in permitting ADUs and have represented ADU applicants both in Northern California and Southern California. Today, I'm speaking on behalf of Habitat ADUs. Habitat is a new company that's for 2 detached ADUs on a multifamily lot on 28th Street. We submitted a letter yesterday afternoon that pertains to that project specifically, but it addresses an issue that I think is of importance to the Zoning Update Committee and the forthcoming ADU ordinance. Subdivision E1 of the new state laws basically says that the jurisdiction has to approve a building permit application for 2 detached ADUs on a lot with a multifamily project. The only development standards in that subdivision are a 4-foot rear and side yard setback and a 16-foot height limit. Now, the plain reading of the law and HCD guidance basically says and confirms that local development standards do not apply to E1 ADUs. They cannot. The only development standards that are applied are those that are found in the subdivision. So I have serious concerns, as does my client, over the new standard that the city is considering adopting, pertaining to multifamily ADUs, the amount of lot coverage requirement in the backyard. Simply, those do not apply.
And that is your 2-minute comment period. Did you want to make one last statement?
Oh, I just want to thank you all for the opportunity to speak, and I hope that our letter can be considered in the ADU ordinance. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so the lawyer is saying, hey, each ADU under 800 square feet should be exempt from local development standards like open space requirements. He's saying each ADU should be exempt. And then the city lawyer comes in to the fray, because, one lawyer is not a party. 2 lawyers, that's a party. Here's the city lawyer's explanation.
One of our city attorneys is on this call. Do you have any responses to that?
Good afternoon, Honorable Committee. We are right now just taking in comments, and we are going to, take the comments back and then discuss internally to see if there'd be any changes. But I have reviewed the letter, and I have spoken to Mr. Ash, and I think there's just a legal difference of opinion. I don't want to speak for Mr. Ash, and of course he's written on the record, but the interpretation under E1, under 65852.2 E1, we can agree that, two detached dwelling units in a multifamily lot, could be compelled, but we don't see, I think he would think that it would be 800 square feet each, and we don't see that in the state legislation. So I think he thinks that ADUs can be larger if they're two detached, and so I think that there's just a difference of legal opinion there.
All right, so now you have a whole picture, and you kind of get it. You have the first two of three important lessons. Lesson one. This is complicated. There's like a state law that amends different parts of government code, and then local jurisdictions interpret it. And then lesson number two, lawyers can make it even more complicated. Because then the lawyers come in and they argue about the interpretation of different little words and commas, and so they can argue for a long, long time about whether it's supposed to be each ADU up to 800 square feet or combined all the ADUs up to 800 square feet. As a lawyer, rules lawyer. But for the most important final lesson, I have picked out a 5-second clip from this meeting that kind of shows you how the sausage gets made. This is lesson number 3. Make deals with the city. Here's the clip.
Yeah, I'll also add that, I've worked collaboratively with him so far, and so I think Mr. Ash and his client, we are going to schedule a meeting to see if we can, work through the issue, and we may have an update for you when we take this to Planning Commission.
Yeah, excellent. Again, this is just the first intake, and it sounds like you're on top of it and working through it.
That's how the sausage gets made. It doesn't matter that the city has a rule or an interpretation that says this. If you can work with the city and you find an outcome that you're both happy with, good outcome, right? For you. And it's a good outcome for the city too. That's why we're going to have a special guest on this show who specializes in suing cities, but also the more affordable steps short of suing cities and how to work with cities. They're kind of experts at being diplomatic with cities, which sometimes involves suing them. They're going to come on the channel, and so you should subscribe so you get a notification when that episode comes out. Because you stuck with me this far, you're gonna love Laura. And for more videos about city politics, check this out. And for more ADU resources, like about HOA rules and rental rules, that kind of thing, check this out.